Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be doing a book review of Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. For anyone who doesn't know, Taylor Jenkins Reid is the same author who wrote The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, which are two very popular books on BookTube and Bookstagram. She's also wrote a few contemporary romances, which I have read one of them. I actually own them all on my Kindle. I've read One True Loves, haven't got round to the others yet, but it will happen eventually. I have a habit of buying books on my Kindle and then forgetting about them because I can't physically see them, but yeah. I will get around to them eventually. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, so I think the way that I'm going to structure it is I'll start by doing a brief overview and a quick summary of what the book is actually about, and then I'll move on to talk about what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy and whether I would recommend it. The book doesn't actually come out until I think it's the end of May. I'll put the release date on the screen here just to double check, but I actually received an advance copy through NetGalley, and I was so excited when I got the email saying that I'd been approved for the ARC, because this was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I think that's why I want to do this dedicated book review. I don't think I've done many dedicated book reviews on my YouTube channel, but I know that a lot of people will probably be interested in this book and will want to know whether it is worth reading and how it compares to Daisy Jones and Evelyn Hugo, because those books were so popular. Malibu Rising mostly follows four siblings who live in Malibu, surprisingly, and they're kind of famous. They're most well known for being the children of Mick Reaver, who is a very popular singer. And if you've read Evelyn Hugo, then you might recognise the name Mick Reaver because he is a character in that book. Although if you haven't read Evelyn Hugo, then I don't think it would make any difference. I mean, I know that it wouldn't make any difference because they are completely separate stories, but they're set in the same world. And so if you have read Evelyn Hugo, then you might notice a few little Easter eggs, which I thought was pretty cool. There's two timelines within the book, and the present day timeline, I guess you would call it the present day timeline, that is set in the 1980s, the early 1980s, and you learn that every year these siblings throw this huge party to celebrate the end of the summer, and it's the kind of party where you get a lot of celebrities that go, like models, famous singers, actors, people within the entertainment industry. And in the first chapter you learn that this year the party gets out of control and the mansion ends up burning down, but you don't know the circumstances around how it happens. There's also a separate timeline that begins, I think it's in the 1950s, where you follow this same family and it gives you an insight into their backstory. The way the book is structured is that it's told over 24 hours, kind of. Obviously you do have the timeline in the past, but the present day timeline that's set in the 1980s, you start at 7 o'clock in the morning on the morning of the party, and then it ends at 7 o'clock the next day. So each chapter is an hour within that day. Whenever I talk about Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, I always talk about the way that she writes characters and how she writes these characters that feel like real people. And when I finished Evelyn Hugo, I couldn't believe that I couldn't go out and Google Evelyn Hugo and that she wasn't a real person. It felt very biographical, and the same with Daisy Jones. I couldn't believe that I couldn't go out and listen to the music that was created in that book. I felt like I was reading about a real rock band. With the characters in Malibu Rising, I did think that they were very well written, which is important, I think, in a book like this because it is so character driven, and I did like that each of the siblings had very distinctive personalities. I would say that in comparison to Taylor Jenkins Reid's other books, I did love the characters in this book, not quite in the same way though as I loved Evelyn Hugo. I wouldn't say that this is a criticism, but I don't know whether the characters in Malibu Rising were as memorable to me as in Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones. There were quite a lot of side characters, and I did struggle a little bit to remember who was who, especially in the second half. In terms of the pacing, I would say that this is a slower paced book. However, because I felt very attached to the characters and I enjoyed reading about them, and in the second half there's quite a lot of drama that I enjoyed reading about. So, okay, the way that I would describe the structure of this book is that the first half you have a lot of build up, but then because of that build up, the intrigue and my investment in the characters made me want to keep on reading throughout the second half. I can't remember if I've mentioned, but I buddy read this with Vish from Books with V, and I ended up reading quite far ahead because I was just so invested in these characters and I needed to know what was going to happen. In terms of the general atmosphere, I really loved that this book made me feel like I'd been transported to Malibu in the 1980s. I mean, I've never been to Malibu and I wasn't even born in the 1980s, but the way that it was written, I felt like I could picture it quite clearly in my mind. And surfing is a very big theme within the book, which again, I don't know how to surf, but I just loved the descriptions and the way that it was built up. And I think that if you like the idea of a book that's set by the sea and that's set on the beach, then I think you would really enjoy this. I've mentioned before on my channel that I use something called Corepile to rate and review all of the books that I read, all of the fiction books I should say, and the way that it works, so it's essentially a spreadsheet that was created by G at Book Roast, and you rate a book for things like characters, atmosphere, writing, intrigue, and your general enjoyment, and then it gives you a score out of 10, which translates to a 5-star rating. So I ran this through Corepile and it came out as a 4-star rating, like a solid 4-star though, and I would definitely agree with that, because even though I loved the experience of reading it and there were certain parts of this book that I did absolutely adore, there was just something about it that wasn't giving me that 5-star feeling. The main reason that this book didn't feel like a 5 stars to me is because I was a little underwhelmed by the ending, and I found that I felt very similar about Daisy Jones, in that the way that the summary hooks you in by talking about this fire and how this mansion ends up burning down, that is what made me want to keep on reading, because I wanted to learn what happened. And I don't want to go into spoilers obviously, but I would say that this book is more about the build up, and when it actually gets to the conclusion, I wasn't disappointed, I would say, but I was underwhelmed is the word that I would use to describe how I felt. But I know that that wouldn't bother some people, and so it was something that I just wanted to mention, because I think it's important to go into this book knowing that it's not a mystery and that it is more of a character-driven character study. Does that make sense? I don't know. I think that if I had to rank Malibu Rising in comparison to the other Taylor Jenkins Reid books that I've read, I would say that Evelyn Hugo is still top of the list, one of my all-time favourite books, but then I would put Malibu Rising, then followed by Daisy Jones, and then One True Love's at the bottom. I have noticed that when it comes to Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones, people seem to prefer one over the other, and so if you've read Malibu Rising, then please let me know in the comments where you would rank it in comparison, because I think it's really interesting. I do think that Taylor Jenkins Reid has a very distinctive writing style, and so I think if you like one of her books, then you have a good chance of liking her other books, but obviously because the stories are so different, I don't know, I just think it's really interesting. Okay, so I think those are the main points that I wanted to cover, but just to summarise, I think that if you like slow-paced, character-driven books, then I would definitely recommend Malibu Rising and also Taylor Jenkins Reid's other books. I never know whether to call them historical fiction, because even though they are quite often categorised as historical fiction, I know a lot of discussion over whether they actually count as being historical. I mean, I personally tend to count historical fiction as anything that was set before the year I was born, and I was born in 1990. So because this was set in the 1980s, I would call it historical fiction, but maybe literary fiction is more accurate. But yeah, I think that does bring me to the end of the video. So thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, if you've read Malibu Rising, or if you're planning to read it, then please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye.